Welcome back, everyone. It's now time to delve deeper into some of the issues that were raised during the presentation and highlighted by our audience. If the presenters want to just put on their mics and their videos, please, that would be brilliant. Okay, so the first question that came in, is there an evidence base for FBT with AN in ASD? Or what are the adaptations or treatment intervention for ARFID, anorexia, when autism is suspected or confirmed? I think that one would be directed at Faye. If you want to take that one.
Yeah, is that two questions or one? One of
the first part is there an evidence base for FBT with AN and ASD? So.
No, I don't know if anything specifically being done, but there's an excellent paper in Frontiers in Psychiatry in January by James Locke and 𝘱𝘭𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀 two experts in the field, just talking about how FBT is an excellent intervention for all sorts of co-occurring problems. I can't think of a better intervention because in FBT, the premise is about empowering parents to help their children. So you're not going into somebody for CBTE, for example, for an hour a week into a therapist. The treatment is conducted through the parents largely, and the parents are already making adaptations for their autistic child. And so in some ways, it's probably the ideal treatment for young people with anorexia, but I'm not aware of any research. It would be worth having a look at that article, though. James Locke and 𝘱𝘭𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀 in Frontiers in Psychiatry, January 2021. It's an excellent account of how co-occurring conditions are taken into account in FBT actually. And the second question, the second half of that, Jacinta, maybe I have it here.
So what are the adaptations or treatment or interventions for ARFID and anorexia when autism is suspected or confirmed?
Okay, so the adaptations to treatments, the things like, this comes from the neuropsychological literature, but also the qualitative literature, where autistic people tell you what adaptations might have been helpful in their treatment sort of after the fact, and clinicians. There are two papers by 𝘗𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀 that and they say that things like literal language, the use of literal language, could be an adaptation. Of course, it depends on the presenting difficulty and the person's own needs. Things like longer processing time would address some of that. An awful lot of psychotherapy is really language laden, and we ask people with potentially executive function difficulties to do things like record their thoughts and to write down what they're thinking and to think of this and to diarize and to do all these other things that are actually really difficult if you have difficulties with executive function. And so adaptations with those sorts of difficulties in mind. Written communication is something that's come up in some of the qualitative literature rather than verbal, and that I think it might have been Mary that mentioned that. I'm not sure if it was Mary that mentioned the into the phone, and then the focus on thinking styles, and that would bring me on to kind of thinking about what I was talking about, cognitive remediation. So that would look at the central coherence, poor central coherence, not being able to see the wood for the trees. But then you could have there are some in the cognitive remediation therapy manual, there are exercises to address that. So it's about, this is pre-treatment. You help people with rigid thinking styles, for example, to think differently, and then you might go into an adapted CBT after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
I don't know if it makes sense. I hope it makes sense.
It was Mary who linked in, so linking into some of the stuff that Mary was talking about, is some difficulties in communication. Yeah, so. Talking of Mary, next question maybe I'll direct to you, Mary. Is it, hi, I'd love to find out more about the link overlap of EUPD and autism. Can you have both? Does experience of trauma play a role in EUPD in autistic people? So again, there's kind of two parts to that. So.
Okay. This is a really complex question, and it's very much a hot topic in psychiatry. And there are various different opinions around this. Certainly psychiatrists who are autism aware will diagnose autism far more frequently, obviously, than those who are not autism aware. My personal view, it's probably the underlying diagnosis. And there is a paper from 2013, 𝘗𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀, who would clearly state that autism is the underlying, the basic diagnosis, and anything else would be layered on top of that. Can you have both? Again, it's a very complex question. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm going to defer on that one, but I will say that a lot of psychiatrists that I know argue very vociferously about that question. But the biggest message is, I think, that borderline personality disorder, EUPD, it is one of the commonest misdiagnoses for women who are autistic. And the management is completely different. So it's really, really important to get that right.
Can I come in on that for a second? I think when it comes to like practically looking at undiagnosed autistic females and those with, or the criteria of borderline personality disorder, that they're very similar if you're not aware of autism and if you're not aware of masking. Because if you look at a female that presents maybe in a psychiatric service, a female who presents in a psychiatric service, and they've got masks upon masks upon masks. And if you look at that and aren't aware of the mask, then it might look like they're not connected to their sense of self. And also when you mask so much, like it's exhausting, so that affects your emotions, and your emotions then go up and down. And you feel disconnected because it's not really you that's connecting to other people around you, it's the mask. So you don't feel connected. So that again can create emotional instability. But when you are aware then that masking is a thing and you can look underneath that, then the reasons for why the behavior might look similar, the reasons for the behavior is very different in autism than it is in the criteria for borderline. So I think it's just about being aware of the masking and how that can look the same, but that you have lots of things that are the same behaviors, but for very different reasons. So it's needing to look underneath and see the reason why.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, you're both kind of saying the same thing, and that it really needs, like, there's a lot of debate around it, but it needs somebody to really know what they're doing and to know both conditions very well. It's not.
Can I say something really quick on that as well? Just that myself, as I've said, I was misdiagnosed with that, but nearly, like, I'm not going to say all, because there are very few who I've met that haven't, but I know a lot of autistic people, women, who, like, there's very few that have not received that diagnosis at some point in their lives. So for some people identify that they do have both, and some people say that they have one or the other, and some people lose their diagnosis like I did. But people are socialized differently. So women are socialized differently to boys, and their behavior is excused because boys will be boys, whereas women, it's pathologized quite differently. So that's what leads as well to the misdiagnosis.
Okay, so next question. So again, I think this one is directed to you, Mary. Also, what supports or treatments other than antidepressants can autistic people with mental health conditions expect or request? And you know, that was directed to Mary, but I think anybody could probably give their view on that one.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about receiving an autism diagnosis is that it allows us to understand ourselves and reframe our view of the world and of ourselves. And for most people that I know, it is really, really positive experience, not necessarily immediately, but really positively. And there are so many autistic people that I know who have had really significant mental health issues throughout their lives. And then suddenly a couple of years after diagnosis, no longer needing such intense mental health support. And that's borne out in the numbers from my survey. One thing to mention that I think is really important, really exciting in terms of medication, particularly because I mean the anxiety, the depression, that that will always be a feature for so many of us. I think psychogenomics and personalized medicine is a really exciting area of research at the moment, and just the idea of being able to test for what is the most likely to work antidepressant and basically get it right first time rather than trying all the various antidepressants that are available. I just think that's really exciting. So I'm hopeful for that field.
Jessica?
Can I come in again that for a second? I just think one of the really important things for me was getting, like, as Danny said, we all have our own sensory profile, and getting to know your sensory profile is really important. Because for ages, I was really angry and I was really agitated and I was really anxious and I was really depressed, and I didn't know what was going on and I didn't understand it all until I really understood my sensory system and realized that so much of it had to do with that. And from understanding my sensory system now, I'm really able to know, like, understand, like, for a while I would use things like colouredy, fidgety toys and stuff because I thought, sensory system, that just means I'll use what's out there already. But I didn't realize that stuff was making me worse, because I thought when I was feeling like low and I was feeling depressed and I was feeling numb, I thought that I needed stimulation to help me, like, feel more things. But it was getting to know my sensory system, I realized that those type of things just make me worse. And really what was happening is I'd gone so far up that I was gone past shutdown, gone into numbness, and I needed things to bring my system back down and to calm me down. And since I've started my mental health has got way better. So I think knowing your sensory system is really important as well.
Excellent. Anybody else want to, Faye or Danny, do you want to come in there?
I'll throw in a few words. Yeah, I'll kind of mirror what Mary was saying about, like, getting the diagnosis can be life-changing, and I mentioned it in my presentation briefly, but it literally has. Like, I was one of those people that Mary talked about in the study. Like, I'd been restrained, I'd spent sometimes, you know, a couple of days in a room with nurses and I wasn't allowed leave. I'd been in secure wards, all of these things. I was very, very seriously unwell. And there's no way I would still be alive had I not gotten the autism diagnosis and the other subsequent ones as well. But so it really is life-changing, and the kind of barriers that people are facing to that is just enormous, and it does really lead to a lot of suicides, and unfortunately not everybody makes it. I did, but it does really change lives. And as Mary said, it's not overnight, it's over time. You know, I'm 4 years down the road after my autism diagnosis, and my life is very different now to what it was before. I'm actually planning for the rest of my life and enjoying my life. And I'm a lot kinder to myself than I was before, because when you're ADHD and autistic and all these different things, you know, it's a bit easier when you're not and you're in conversations. You can maybe plan what you're going to say, different things like that. I can't. I don't have a filter. I can't script. I've lovely words in my head, but that's not always what comes out. And I used to beat myself up over those kind of things, which leads to massive self-esteem difficulties. But I'm actually a lot kinder to myself now. And I think everybody needs to be a bit kinder to themselves around that, because there's nothing I can do to control it. And there's so many aspects like that that lets you reprocess your life and make sense of things in a different lens and kind of go, okay, I'm just doing my best. You know, there's nothing else I can do. So if we can all just, just be more compassionate to ourselves in the whole process. But it's a very stressful thing, and there's many places along the process that people will fall off and feel, that's it, I'm done. But if people can keep going, keep getting support and connecting with people, hopefully we can move in better directions.
Danny, and I agree. I think the most powerful work we do clinically is not in a 50-minute session with a psychologist once a week or with a therapist once a week. It's how we help young people in particular to how attributions, if we can help with the identification and diagnosis, and then we can help to change the attributions of people around you and how they might scaffold your difficulties, rather than getting into trouble for having executive functioning problems, rather than being thought of as curt or rude, rather than the whole new junior cycle curriculum, which is based on project work with people you don't know in your year, where young people with autism are at a massive disadvantage. So anything that we can do in a young person in the rest of the week, in the 50 minutes they're not in the room with the psychologist, I think is probably of much greater benefit than adaptations you might make to CBT for 50 minutes and, 12 sessions or something. So I think the treatment is about changing the system as much as it is about anything else.
Yeah, totally agree with you there, Faye. So there is actually a question directly for you, Faye, there, if you wouldn't mind taking it. Can you explain the point about alexithymia at the end of Faye's slides, wondering how this might be key to understanding the link between ASD and anorexia?
Okay, so alexithymia is alexithymia is the difficulty in identifying your emotions. And this is a study that was done with a non-clinical population, just as a caveat, but it's still very interesting. It looked at whether alexithymia might be the key to the risk of eating disorders in women with autism. So it's the difficulty, as I say, identifying and labeling your own emotions. And it's been found in as many as 77% of women with anorexia, and it's also obviously a feature of autism. And they found that those with autism and alexithymia are at a greater risk of eating psychopathology. And they posit that maybe it exacerbates social difficulties. So if we go back up to that model that I showed earlier on, of maybe how AN and ASD interact, then maybe social difficulties in school. We know young women with undiagnosed autism, the transition to secondary school and the way the social rules change, the extra stress on your executive function, all of that, and then your alexithymia your difficulty labeling your own emotions associated with that thing could make it more likely that the stress associated with that could lead to restricting, because restricting is great because it numbs all those negative emotions that you maybe have difficulty even identifying. I mean, obviously it's a lethal strategy, and anorexia is associated with the highest rate of mortality of any psychiatric illness, but that could be, in the short term, it is actually very effective at helping to manage emotions that maybe you're struggling to label or identify. But as I say, that's at an early stage, that research.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I think we just have a time for one quick question. So it's probably not really a quick one. I'm not going to give it to you, but I just kind of throw it out there maybe to everybody to have a think about. So should we be screening everyone attending CAM services for autism?
Well, I start. That's close to my heart. We are in our service, certainly. There are screening questions. We fall down with girls. We are learning every day that passes more and more and more. And there are 3 members of my department organising this event, which I'm very proud of. They are educating the rest of the department and the rest of Lucena, and events like this are just fantastic. We are screening. We're missing girls, and we know we are, and we're much more mindful of it than we were, I think. But also, the research is and the lived experience of people in clinic are influencing us in that sense. So we probably have a very cursory screen, but at the same time we are screening everybody who attends CAMS for AD.
Probably need to develop,
and obviously have no barrier to criteria for CAMS, which is moderate to severe mental health condition. That's just our CAMS teams. I can't speak for all CAMS.
Thanks, Faye. Jessica, were you going to say something there?
Sorry. Yeah, we probably need more screening tools that aren't so biased towards males. That would probably help in screening for females as well.
Oh,
just more awareness of female, or sometimes it's the female presentation is also the male presentation, but different presentations of autism rather than the stereotypical.
Yeah. And one of the questions are in relation to that is, if so, what screening tools can we use?
Not sure if there is any.
Develop them by autistic people.
Develop them, yeah.
Yeah.
People with professional.
Yeah, I agree. By autistic women, I think, actually. Yeah. No, so our this
both, I think, would be good.
Our questionnaire screening measures almost never pick up ASD in girls, but we do have other screening tools in our intake assessments.
Great. Okay, I'm just conscious of the time. We're just coming up to 2 minutes, so I just wanted to check in with everybody. Is there anything, last thing anybody would like to say that they haven't got an opportunity yet to say? No? Okay, well, thank you all so much. That was really, really good. And it was really nice to hear people talking about, you know, the place they're in now being better than, you know, before their diagnosis. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences and all the information that you've provided tonight. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for this evening. So I want to really, really sincerely thank you all for contributing tonight. It was a really good event tonight. We'll do our best to get the recording of the event online at the SJOG Research Foundation.ig as soon as possible. Just want to also remind you about our next and final event in the series, which takes place next Wednesday, the 10th of February, and it will focus on neurodiversity in the workplace. So please visit the PSI events page to register for the event if you haven't already done so. And if anybody requires CPD points for tonight, please email autism@psychologysociety.ie and we can get them sorted for you. So again, all that's left to say is thank you all so much, and looking forward to seeing you all again next week. So thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thanks.